So welcome to the second part of the match. Here we are on board 5 and here is playing our captain Tomáš Carlos. He had black and it was a King's Indian. And you see he has some issues with this bishop and also the pawn structure not looks too good. Yeah? There are some weaknesses, maybe here. The only plus he has control over the open file, only open file. So here white had a very strong move, and this move was f4. And you see the pressure against e5, and this pin from this pawn would have given white a very nice game. But however he missed it, and here he played queen to f3. Tomáš protected f6, and here I think white missed the opportunity to keep this bishop bad, because now already after c5 the bishop starts to work on this diagonal. If you ever play f3 as it happened in the game, the pressure will increase. Okay, this is a check. And here white made a horrible blunder. Now black has a winning move. Do you see it? Yes, you do. The rook is hanging. So this was Tomáš, and he won on the 5th board. Now this is our 6th board. He played our player Pavel Havlik, and he played a very nice opening, a French, and took a brave decision here. He was to move, and he took this pawn not with the knight, he took it with the pawn. This gives him an isolated pawn, but also some very active possibilities. And white of course tried to attack him on the king side, but Pavel was able to defend this. Then they reached an endgame. This position, and you see the pawn is still on the board. It's isolated pawn, but it's not so isolated anymore. But here unfortunately Pavel made a positional mistake. He should have taken now with the knight this bishop, and after knight takes, king to f6, this position might be drawish, because this knight has nowhere to go, and the king will get access to e5. For example, if this knight goes to c4, e5, and whenever this knight exchanges himself to this bishop, this pawn will be a passed pawn, and this should give black enough counterplay. Okay, but the game here went like this, and this position occurred, and it was a problem for black, because now the white king and the white knight are much more active than the black pieces. Gotta check. And now he can have no access to f6 because of this fork. So he had to play king to g7, and now the pawn got lost. So, however, Pavel sacrificed another pawn and got some counter chances here. The position. So this position is still winning for white, but it's already a little bit complicated. Here actually he had a nice winning plan. It was the idea to sacrifice the knight for this dangerous pawn and to play with these two pawns. It would have gone like this. Check and sacrifice the knight, and now king to b5, and this position looks very strong for white, isn't it? So what white played here to b7, this pawn has to be stopped, and now knight to f6. Of course we do not take the knight, we give this fork. Yes, and the position was somehow unclear now. You see, this pawn is still very dangerous, and whenever this king attacks the knight, he may drop back to b3. So actually here was the last possibility to play e3. Pavel played king to e3, and this is much weaker, because now the white knight sacrifices itself for the pawn, and here white has already a winning move. Do you see it? Yes, it's this one, king to e5. King to c5 would be much weaker. And now you see that black is helpless, he cannot defend the g5 pawn, and the knight must watch the e pawn. So now we are on the 6th board. Here played Tritongle, and he had to play a young talented player, so this is always a difficult task. So here Petr played knight to e5. I think this is very nice, and the position already looks very good for white. He has control over the half open file. This bishop has to watch over the weak squares, and this counter chances didn't seem too strong. White's plan is clear, he will play f3 and e4, and the bishop pair will tell. So now it happens like this, and you see there are no counter chances for black, and here actually he committed a blunder. It was e5, and now after the next move from white, black had to resign because he would lose a rook at least. So this was Petr's game, he played quite solid. So here we are on the 8th board, and here Mr. Zamecznik played a kind of Botvinnik system, and here he took a brief decision and played b4. You see, this opens up the c file by force, and also this pawn might be weak. The game continued like this, and you see now whenever this knight moves, c7 will be unprotected. So this rook might go to c7 and even to e8. So black played queen to e4. It might have been that the queen might have dropped back, but okay. He played bishop to d2, and now unfortunately here Zamecznik made a blunder. He played knight to d4, and you see this knight is somehow hanging. Black just has to exchange the queens, and now comes the black knight to d5. Chotěboř was not able to hold this endgame.